I know we've all heard stories about wealthy people who get to heaven and try to bring their things with them, like the woman who comes to heaven with gold in her hands. And Peter meets her there and says, "So why did you bring pavement?" Or the rich man who figured out a way to take all of his money with him, asked his wife to put all the money in a casket when she buried him. And so she did, but she put it in the form of a check. The truth is, we can't take it with us, but some of us try. We have possessions that we consider precious, things we surround ourselves with, as if they're more important than something else. And whenever I consider those things that are precious, I can't help but remember the day when I was 9 or 10 years old and almost caught our house on fire. I'm not sure I can explain what was going on in my mind, but what 9 or 10-year-old thinks clearly anyway. The good news is I put the fire out before it became a crisis. But before I did that, I went through the house looking for those things that I thought were the most important things to save. 9 or 10 years old, I don't know what my list would look like today. But at the time, I got our pet parakeet, my brand new pair of shoes, and the JFK $50 I got for my birthday. I don't know what that list would look like now, but I shake my head every once in a while and think, oh my gosh, that's what I thought was important. If you had to leave your house and could only take with you what you could carry, what would you take? Or what would you do if in the middle of the night, emergency personnel came to the door, told you you have to evacuate? What would you put in your car as you get ready to leave? Now, if you've not taken the time to go through that mental exercise to think through those things, it's probably worth your time to do so. You'll probably learn some things about yourself, but more importantly, you'll probably learn how important it is to have a plan. I mean, if a fire were to break out in here right now, do you know what you would take with you? Your purse, your phone, your car keys? More importantly, do you know how you would get out? Do you know where the exits are in here? I mean, we all know the exits as we came in. Some of you came in from this way, and some of you know you can go out onto Westlink through the doors that way. But there's a door here on the side that also goes out in the parking lot. If there's a different kind of emergency and you needed to go to the basement, you can go down that way, or you can go back down that way. There is an emergency exit behind the pulpit that you can't see for pews. You may not know that one exists. Or you can go out through Gallery West. There's a door there that goes into the courtyard. There's also behind the choir, there's a door that will go out into the courtyard, or you can go down in the basement from that direction as well. I mean, we hold fire drills at schools, and a large part of learning that is how to follow directions. And I have no idea how many lives that simple process has saved. It's why flight attendants tell us where the exits are on an airplane, even though most of us have not used them. Most of us trust that the people in other settings will help lead us out of a crisis when we're in those unfamiliar places, like a restaurant or shopping center or even church. But most places don't have lights on the floor to tell you where the exit is. And a lot of us haven't thought about the fact that if there's smoke in a room, it might go down and you won't be able to see the emergency exit light. So it's an important practice every time you enter into a space to figure out, how can I get out if I need to? Hoping nothing will ever happen. A couple of weeks ago, I went to a workshop for church leaders to talk about how we would respond to an active shooter at church. No one wants to talk about that. Nobody wants it to happen any more than anyone wants a fire to break out. But yesterday's news reminds us that it can happen anytime and any place. And if we don't think through what we will do, we will find ourselves ill-prepared for a crisis, and the crisis might be made worse. You see, the more we think through how we will respond, the better we will do when it comes time to respond. And it really doesn't matter if what we had imagined is what actually takes place. It's the process of thinking through that helps. In a similar way, there are people who encourage us to think through what we will do or what we want done when we die. From wills and estate plans and other financial concerns to organ donation and burial plans and end-of-life medical decisions. For some people, there are concerns related to our children, and for others, related to our pets. Anyone who has taken the time to do any of that kind of planning will tell you it's hard work. Part of the reason it's hard work is because we don't want to face the truth. We will all die. I mean, the last time I checked, the mortality rate was still hovering right around 100%. For some people, their estate can make a nice safety net for their children or their grandchildren. For others, it becomes an opportunity to be generous and make a lasting difference in the lives of others. Even if your estate is not very large, it's important to help your family by making your wishes and your desires known. The West Heights Foundation is putting together resources to help you with that planning because we believe it's a good thing to do. We also believe the church could become a beneficiary of your planning. But the more important fact is that the more you plan ahead, the better your lives will be and better the lives of your children will be. So watch for details when those plans come in place, come next February. Or talk to somebody on the foundation board this week. In Hiawatha, where we used to live, a story was told about a couple who had amassed a fairly sizable estate. They had no children, no heirs. And in their waning years, people from the community began to ask them what their plans were for their estate. I don't think anybody was nefarious in their asking. They simply wanted to remind them that you can't take it with you. They suggested things like scholarships or endowments. There were community projects that would benefit from their money. Those questions became more pointed when Sarah died, but John Davis was insistent that no one was going to benefit from his wealth. He knew he couldn't take it with him, but he didn't want anyone else to have it either. So after his wife's death, we have some pictures here, Davis commissioned an artist to create life-size statues of he and his wife in various stages of their lives. The last stage has a picture of him sitting next to an empty chair. That's what's on the picture cover of your bulletin this morning. These statues were made from imported Italian marble. They were completed in 1934 in the midst of the Depression at a cost in excess of $200,000. I have no idea how much that would cost today to build those statues. In Luke's gospel, we hear the story of a man who asked Jesus to help him get his fair share of an estate. We don't know the details, but I have heard, and I'm sure some of you have heard, more than one story of families who fight over the estate, especially when there's no clear directives. It's why we encourage people to draw up a will before they die. It's hard to do it after you die. It's part of making those plans I mentioned earlier. It doesn't always prevent an argument or a fight over the inheritance, but it does help settle disputes. Listen to how Jesus responds to this question. Someone from the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus said to him, "Man, who appointed me as judge or referee between you and your brother?" Then Jesus said to them, "Watch out. Guard yourself against all kinds of greed. After all, one's life isn't determined by one's possessions, even when someone is very wealthy." Then he told them a parable. A certain rich man's land produced a bountiful crop. He said to himself, "What will I do? I have no place to store my harvest." Then he thought, "Here's what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. That's where I'll store all my grain and goods. I'll say to myself, 'You've stored up plenty of goods, enough for several years. Take it easy. Eat, drink, and enjoy yourself.' But God said to him, 'Fool, tonight you will die. Now who will get the things you have prepared for yourself?' This is the way it will be for those who hoard things for themselves and aren't rich toward God." The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Amen. We can't take it with us. I mean, that doesn't stop us from trying to get as much as we can. We accumulate stuff. In fact, one of the most successful business models in America right now are storage units. We have so much stuff we can't keep it in our own homes. I mean, personal example. When I graduated from college and officially moved out from underneath my parents' home, everything I owned fit in my car, a 2-door hatchback. I moved across country. The next time I moved, it wouldn't all fit. I've moved a dozen times since then, and I'm almost embarrassed to admit, every time I've moved, it took a bigger truck. I know it's part of the American experience. It's also a sad indictment on our consumer culture. And I consider myself fortunate, because with every move comes a cleansing. A thorough inventory that comes with an invitation to remove excess, to give away those things I no longer use. Those who never move keep accumulating and don't realize how much stuff they have. And anybody who has downsized can tell you how true that is. It's part of why I think this text is sometimes hard to hear. We all need bigger barns. John Wesley, the man who began the Methodist movement, was one of those rare exceptions. He began his ministry with a small stipend. Over the years, his stipend increased, but he continued to live on the same amount and give away everything else. But I'm not sure this text is asking us to live at the edge of poverty. See, there have also been countless others who earned sizable incomes throughout their lives, who made generosity one of their core values. Warren Buffett reportedly has said he is leaving his children enough to be comfortable, but not so much that they can't not work. The vast majority of his estate is going to charity. It's as if he understands this text the way I understand it. Rich or poor, Jesus says, we can use what we have for the benefit of others. It's not about how much we accumulate or get to that point where we think we can eat, drink, and be happy. I mean, that doesn't mean we shouldn't ever put money into a 401k or to plan for our retirement. It does mean that when we make those plans, we should also be asking the question of who is going to benefit from this. And I know some people will choose to squander what they have, living by the motto, I'm spending my children's inheritance. Jesus is inviting us to live differently, to live generously, to live simply. Since we have more than we need, since we can't take it with us, Jesus is inviting us to be good stewards of the gifts we have, to plan well for the futures of our estates. You see, there will come a day when your estate is settled. one way or another. And the more we prepare with that in mind, the richer and better our lives will be. And that, I believe, is what Jesus is inviting us to do. Amen.